Okay, so today we're going deep on a fascinating story. The history of Trafalgar Castle School.
Yeah.
Now, this is a school for girls in Whitby, Ontario.
Yeah.
And it has, I think, an unusual origin story, you could say.
Yeah.
One that involves a little bit of gambling, some financial woes,
Yeah.
and a very grand castle.
It's a good one.
So to really understand how Trafalgar Castle School came to be,
Right.
we got to rewind the clock.
Okay.
Way back to 1859.
Wow.
To Whitby, Ontario.
Yeah.
Where we find the local sheriff,
Okay.
Nelson Gilbert Reynolds, who decides he wants to build himself a castle.
Oh, wow. A castle.
Yeah, a castle.
And not just a house.
No, not just any house, a castle.
Okay.
And this was not some, little modest castle.
Yeah.
This thing cost $70,000 to build.
Yep, 1859.
In 1859.
That's a lot of money.
Huge amount of money when you think that the average home at that time cost about $2,000.
Oh, wow.
So this is a really
bold statement.
bold statement.
Yeah.
And not only that,
Yeah.
but he decided to name his castle Trafalgar.
Trafalgar.
Uh-huh.
After the famous battle.
After the Battle of Trafalgar.
Yeah.
So I think that tells us a little something about Sheriff Reynolds, right?
It does. He was
Ambitious.
Yeah, ambitious, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little over the top.
Over the top, yeah.
A bit of a showman?
Maybe a little bit of a showman.
Yeah.
But as we alluded to, our sheriff had some expensive tastes.
Yeah.
And unfortunately also a bit of a gambling problem.
Ah, so that's where the money went.
That's where the money went.
Yeah.
So sadly, he ended up having to sell his beloved Trafalgar.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. But luckily, this is where the story gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because a group of Methodists saw this as an opportunity, not just to acquire a really beautiful property, but to do something really groundbreaking.
Okay, what was that?
So they purchased the castle for a fraction of the original cost. Only $30,000.
Wow, that's a steal.
With the vision of establishing a progressive school for girls.
A school for girls?
Yeah,
Okay.
and they called it the Ontario Ladies College.
Okay.
Pretty forward-thinking name for the time, don't you think?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Like, this is 1874.
Right, yeah, that's not
when,
the typical thing.
The prevailing notion was that women's education should focus on,
a homemaking skills.
The domestic skills. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But the founders of Ontario Ladies College, these were some really interesting people.
Yeah, who were they?
There was Reverend J.E. Sanderson.
Reverend.
And a local businessman named James Holden.
Okay.
They had a very different vision for what women's education should look like.
Okay, what was that?
They wanted to prepare young women for university.
Wow.
And for careers.
Really?
Yeah. Okay.
So their curriculum was really interesting.
Well, how did they teach?
It included, the traditional subjects, of course.
Right.
But they also taught literature.
Yeah.
Science and the arts.
Wow.
So this was a real departure from the typical finishing school type education that most girls were receiving at the time.
Right.
And they had a pretty grand opening, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, their grand opening was on September 3rd, 1874.
Okay.
And it was attended by none other than the Governor General himself.
Wow.
Lord Dufferin.
Really?
So that must have been a pretty big deal for this new school.
Yeah, it must have lent them some credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to have the Governor General attend your opening ceremony, that's a pretty big deal.
That's a good start.
And then later on, they had visits from other notable figures like Prince Arthur.
Oh, wow.
And Sir John A. Macdonald.
Really?
Who actually visited even before the school officially opened.
Oh.
So I guess they were kind of in on it from the beginning.
Yeah, like they knew it was going to be something special.
Yeah, and then later on, they had some really interesting speakers come.
Like who?
Like the author Lucy Maud Montgomery.
Oh, wow.
And the poet Bliss Carman.
Interesting.
So this school really became a bit of a cultural hub in the area.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So as time went on,
obviously
the landscape of Canada changed.
Right.
The religious landscape changed.
Right.
And in 1925, the school became associated with the United Church of Canada.
Okay. How did that change things?
Well, it's interesting because even though the religious context evolved, the school's commitment to academic excellence and to empowering young women never wavered.
So that was always at the core.
Always at the core.
That's really great.
Yeah. And then, of course, the school continued to evolve.
Yeah.
And in 1979, it was officially renamed Trafalgar Castle School.
So that's where the name comes from.
Okay. And today, it's a thriving independent day and boarding school for girls from grades 4 to 12.
Wow. So it's still going strong.
Still going strong.
That's amazing.
And, it's amazing to think that those core values of academic excellence, personal growth, and leadership development, they're still at the heart of everything they do.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty incredible story.
It is.
From a sheriff's extravagant dream to this really lasting legacy of girls' education.
Yeah. And it really makes you think about how far we've come in terms of, women's education and what the future holds for places like Trafalgar Castle School. Yeah. What are the challenges that they're going to face and the opportunities as they continue to help young women make their mark on the world?
It really is something to think about.
Yeah.
So that's the story of Trafalgar Castle School.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks for diving in with me.
Of course.
I hope you enjoyed that deep dive into Trafalgar Castle School.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it just goes to show that, sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most incredible outcomes.
That's true.
So, until next time.
Yeah.
Happy exploring.
Bye.